We're here today to talk about deep customization of hub and enterprise sites. I'm Graham Hudgens. I work out of the DC R&D Center as a product engineer.
I'm Dave. I work for our DC R&D Center out of my house in Colorado.
Yeah. Dave's he's a software developer lead. So he's going to keep me honest as we go through some of the technical bits. It says deep customization. It's probably not as deep as some of the talks in this conference, so don't be too afraid. But we'll get a little bit of our HTML on and overview some of the best practices at building sites in either enterprise or hub. So you're in the right spot. If you want to build the non-GIS person's interface to your GIS, and you want to get more out of the group item list screen in ArcGIS Online Enterprise, or you want to engage with your public, a lot of other things. So what is sites? Just to recap, it's a part of Portal we added in 10.6.1. One of the age-old things that we were asked as the open data and hub team is, when can I have that user experience in my portal? So we added it. It comes with your portal pre-installed. An admin has to initialize it, make sites. It can make pages. We'll talk a lot about these sites and pages throughout the talk. What is Hub? Hub used to be called Open Data. So some of you are like, I don't have Hub, I have to pay for that. You actually do. We'll talk about how you have it with your base online subscriptions and how it can also make sites and pages and do a couple of other nice things as well. There's also a licensable Hub Premium, which adds another org to your ArcGIS Online. We'll talk about that towards the end. So this is kind of the architecture, if you will, for ArcGIS Online and Hub. When to use Hub. When you can use ArcGIS Online. There's no credit burn. You don't have to worry about people viewing and some kind of bandwidth earning through your online credits and storage and things like that. We host the infrastructure. You can launch as many sites as you want. So if you can use it, it's a good product to use. Hub is also ahead. It releases weekly. It's ahead in features and functionality. I'll be doing most of my demoing here from Hub, and I will point out the differences where there are differences between what's in 10.7 for enterprise and what's in Hub. And there's a slightly updated user interface for the site editor itself. You'll notice it because it looks different than what's in 10.6.1 and what's in 10.7. That's going to come for enterprise in 10.7.1, for example. Hub's also optimized for the web. Any image we give you is put in Amazon's content distribution network. Is that right? CDN? I don't know what CDN means. But it makes the images fast. And it also, we spend a lot of effort to optimize for search engines so that you can be found, your public sites can be found on Google. Finally, Hub contains 3 subsystems that enterprise sites does not, and they're pretty cool. One's a custom domain URL support with HTTPS certificate generation, automatic. We have an expanded download system for anonymous users and a caching layer that helps protect your servers from getting asked for the same download over and over again. And we have an improved search experience over the platform. As an R&D center, we get to do some cool things in online because we ship to one environment. So we built a separate search index. If you type in like an attribute field name, we'll return the service that contains that. That's something that the platform does not yet do. One of the cool things of being on the outside is we get to show how that's awesome and then fold it into the rest of Esri. So these are things that may come in enterprise in the future. Finally, Hub has this additional licensable features for external community engagement, either your citizens or the businesses that you may work with. And that's not available in enterprise. When to use enterprise sites? Your IT policy prohibits you from using ArcGIS Online. You work in a disconnected environment. Your network's private, secure. You need the control of the web server. You need total control. You love control. So how to set these applications up? One's easy, one's hard, but they're both not that bad. In Hub and ArcGIS Online, the reason you probably don't see it if you're like, I didn't know I had that, it's because it's still behind a bunch of open data settings. This is stuff we want to fix in the future. So you have to go into your org settings and enable open data, and it's going to seem scary if you're kind of one of those data people, but it doesn't make any of your items shared publicly. You don't have to worry about all of your item security will stay the same. In the future, we'll probably eliminate this need for this setting. You also need to add some privileges to your users for the non-admins who want to use Hub. There's a couple of privileges you need. They're there listed on the screen. That second one is really important if you want to use the initiative framework. because initiatives have their own teams and can allow for shared editing of items. And to do shared editing of items in online, you need to make groups with update privileges. This setting is under the administrative block of privileges, but I don't actually think it's that administrative. It's just a capability, but it's one you have to consider. So I always like to take a publisher and add these three if I was to define a role for my website team in Hub in online. Then you need to assign the members to the role you just made. Then you need to visit the Hub admin app. And then you can decide via initiative teams or the overall Hub administration team who gets access to the app. It's a little complex. It promises not that bad. You take a picture of this. There's also YouTube videos of me doing it in prior conferences. I'm not going to demo this today. It's a little easier in enterprise sites. You just click as an admin, click as of 10.6.1, you click the site app launcher tile, and then you assign the members of your portal that you want to be able to make websites in your portal to the team. This is again using one of those groups. We have this kind of hypothesis that website teams are small and you don't want to probably give it to everybody who can create items at this point. And sometimes website teams have members who go on vacation and other users will be wanting to edit those websites after that user's on vacation. So that's kind of why we did this team or group-based approach. So by actually landing in the app, we'll make a group that helps share things. And optionally, that site app launcher tile is there for all admins out of the box in Portal 10.6.1 and greater. When we initialize the app, we make a reference to the app and put it in that same team. So as you add users to the team, they get the app launcher as well. Admins get 2, so if it really bugs you, you can turn it off. There's a doc article about how to do that in the enterprise documentation. One other note about 10.6.1, we have a patch. I highly recommend it. It was our first golf swing at this, and we're not very good at golf, so we had to patch things on day 1. We have a second one that's not as critical, but contains a bunch of other fixes and a couple of quality of life improvements that'll be due out here in a week. I just have to verify it, so it's like in that final stages. Don't not apply the patch if you're on 10.6.1. So sorry if you went to any of my demo theaters earlier today, but I'm going to rehash some old ground. Hopefully I scared you out of them. But it's important to do some planning. There's a saying in scuba diving of plan the dive, dive the plan. If you're getting started, you want to start small. So you want to just pick one site to build. If you're in enterprise or you want to do an internal hub site, which is totally possible, they're just items, pick like a department site, pick a GIS team, or sorry, a team that consumes your GIS data that has no clue about GIS, the ones that email you and ask you to print things, pick those people. Data clearing houses type sites. You can also build sites for your enterprise collaboration and even like theme it around the brand you're collaborating or the portal you're collaborating with. Popular for online is the public open data site or a project that you're doing, but just do one of them. Don't try to do too much. Don't jump into the master plan yet. Just do one. There's a bunch of examples in online. There's project sites. There's sites that feature open finance data. There's sites that feature projects in other languages that I think it's about water. There's things like performance metrics. You can have like a city dashboard of your KPIs and the data that's underneath it. You can build a site of just your data that's public. So these are some external examples. Internal examples are things like internal data libraries, data that you're frequently sharing with people, things that you're explaining to people over and over again. That's a good use case. Some people build sites like that middle one where it's like, here's the data, and then there's the app or map. So kind of connecting more than just the app, you're giving them kind of the context or some other frame around it. That's another good way to do it. More deep planning, if you make a couple sites, you'll end up with a bunch of islands, an archipelago. It's beautiful, but they're all different from each other. And some people want to build like a really nice looking city where there's a center of your site map, there's some regions and neighborhoods and things like that. The 2 questions that will drive your site map most importantly after you had your one success is for public sites, how will this fit into your existing organization's website? Do you have one? Some of you come from local governments, you might have like a header system already. Maybe you're already being referenced off from there. If you don't do this, it may be in success, you'll have to, so it's a good idea to think about it. Matching the header system is a good idea, even if it's branding. The other question that's important is, do you need to make just department type websites that'll engage with those groups of people and that's it? Or do you need to make an external version of your GIS? The external version of your GIS internally is useful if you have a lot of people who want to use that unlimited enterprise sites like L1 user thing. It's useful externally as like an open data site. You want to engage, here's all my data. So these two questions will help drive, can you stay in island land with just a bunch of different sites, or do you want to make kind of a system? So a lot of people will start in island land with many different sites, looking many different ways. These are graphical representations of them. A good way to just upgrade that experience is to customize the home screen of your portal or ArcGIS Online to jump you off into those sites. That's a simple way. And it looks something like this. You can just have tiles in the home app link you to the different sites. The next level of sophistication up is you decide, you know what, I want all the sites to kind of congeal. They're part of the same system. I want to build a kind of a more complex system. So watch the 3 icons at the bottom. You can put the same exact header on all 3. We support a custom header functionality. I'll show it to you here in a bit, and we'll talk a lot about HTML and stuff in there. But you can copy and paste. If you put the same links in all of your sites, it becomes one site, even though there's 3 site items under the hood. And this is a good way to kind of build a broader web property. You can also use a site as the root site. Same header system across all 4 of these sites now, but 3 of them are subdivisions, and one of them is the mama site that has all your GIS data. So this is the kind of like things like you want to think through this. How many divisions you have, how many subdivisions you have, do you need a root thing, how will you make it all tie together? If you have like 50 subdivisions, you probably can't do 50 links in a header, so you might want to think of something different. Feel free to talk to me about this after if you have like specific kind of use case in mind and you're like, I don't know if that would work. Another example is you can kind of do a root site that's not something made by Hub or Enterprise Sites. You can do some WordPress site that's already out there, just add some links to that header and try to reuse that header and then launch out to your sites. And this is great because you can your users can like stumble into the GIS and have no clue that they're looking at data or apps or maps that come from a sophisticated system of record. They're just looking at a website. So that's kind of the idea. And if you go and do this type of sitemap where you have sites pointed to sites, there's this relationship that pages can be underneath sites. So that enables each of the subsites at the bottom here to have reusable pages underneath. And pages are useful if like that department wants to have specific focus around their maps or story maps and their data, or they want to have a specific focus around a project or something underneath that they want to feature. They can be useful for things like documentation, just like here's how to use this. And then you can reuse that documentation page in all 3 sites and it'll adhere to the branding of the site it's being referenced underneath. So all of that is just like stuff to think about and builds a good plan. It's like building a bullet list is the output. PowerPoint has smart art if you want to do it kind of graphical and have a digital thing to share. You can do fancy software. I happen to have, because of a prior job, that lets you make fancy diagrams, but you don't need fancy diagrams. The reality of how these come together in terms of making how many sites I'll make and how many pages I'll make really looks something like a whiteboard. And try to find a stakeholder, a website stakeholder from every like division that you're working with. Get them in a room after you've had your successful proof of concept site and talk about the realm of the possible. Show them something like this, watch, do a planning exercise and get everybody to agree early. It'll save you a lot of headache later. If you go and just make sites, then somebody later will be like, make it fit. And also, if you don't think about how it's discoverable, it might just be a beautiful thing over here. And if nobody can get to it, in online, it's great because it's like Google exists. So if you put it out there and you name it correctly, people will find it through Google. But in your organization, they need to find it through something. So integrate it with something internal. And make sure you name it something in online that is findable. So like, yeah. So how would I do this? Just a quick demo. Assuming I've turned on my hub, and assuming I can see my mouse, you'll be able to make a site kind of fresh just with the create new site button. And you'll notice when you do that, the site gets a URL. I'm going to make this bigger. I'm going to make it smaller. So you can pick the site's URL here, and we'll give you a URL with the ArcGIS domain. You can also add your own custom domain. This is technical, so you'll need to talk to your IT team who owns your domain. There's documentation on how to do it. Once you put a custom domain on here, our system will issue you an HTTPS certificate. Make sure you follow the documentation. Some people they know how the web works, and they'll like hook their custom domain to our infrastructure, and you won't get an HTTPS certificate if you don't follow the documentation. So follow the documentation about that. So if you make a couple sites, they each have their own layout. So this is like my site's layout. It's really boring. It's the default one. I click X, I'll go back. I can also make sub-pages underneath each site. So there's an evacuation plan page. I can make a new one or link an existing one. We'll also, in this new editor, for those in online, you can do this directly from here as well. This is going to be the user experience of how to do pages in the eventual end state, but very easy to make a page or find another item of a page in your org and link it in that way. So that's how you can kind of set this up. When I mentioned the header, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but if I change to a custom header, you notice the default template of the custom header has links in it. With the text editing experience that's now available in online, you can graphically edit these links. But in enterprise for now, it's more of a code experience. So you'd have to kind of go in here and find the HTML, find that existing header that you probably have in your organization, and there will be kind of an act of integrating that header that might exist in that other website platform into your hub or your enterprise. And that's an act of working with the HTML that's here. We'll talk more about that here in a little bit, but this would be what I mean by setting up the links. That would be different from site to site. And that's how you can really make this thing incognito into some other web property, because as you work with the site, you have now a common system at the top. Last notes on planning. Plan to update your site every so often. A whole lot of you, thousands of people who've made sites in the past will set it and forget it. And that can have some adverse effects. The time bomb here is actually probably Google Chrome a little bit. It's that custom HTML you wrote. Maybe you cut some corners. Maybe it looked good that one day. Maybe you never resized it on mobile and looked at how it looked and responded. And if you do that, time can take its toll. It doesn't usually shift, but occasionally things can happen. So after you're already up and running, I would just put a calendar invite recurring with you and the other people that work on the sites every quarter, month, whatever it needs to be, and just call it site update day, get together, decide, make some changes, feature some different data, make sure everything's fresh. You can set it and forget it, but it's not a great idea. You also want to follow our changelog in online, and there's obviously the equivalent in enterprise. We usually ship to production on Tuesdays, so you get features every week, and the app will progressively get better. And user experiences can change. We usually will notify if there's any major or breaking change to the root admins of your org, whoever the contact person is. So it's very rare, but we just released a new search experience and we just put out a new change to the way the search results look in online. So that was an example where a few weeks before we sent an email, we've blogged about it. It's been in beta for almost like a year, but people were still surprised. So that's another kind of thing that we can strike you as the vendor, but we're trying to make the app better, and we'll usually not mess with your stuff best as possible. So planning up next is preparing your data. I'm going to go through this pretty fast because it's not very difficult. It's like great portals and great online content makes great sites. Gandhi didn't say that. The product manager of Enterprise said that, and she's exactly right. So if you don't have descriptions, you don't have licenses, you don't have any of this stuff, the stuff that's on your site sucks. So humanize your attributes with attribute aliases. Difference between the left and the right, look at the columns on these tables. What is B25002 EST1? But it's total housing units. So put aliases on stuff. You don't have to change the field name. It won't break anything programmatically. You can do that here. Turn on editor tracking. That'll allow us to know when the data changes and who changed it and when it was modified. Large data, simplify and reduce the number of vertices. The latest is greatest for server. Of course, I'm going to say that. Hub and sites is optimized best for server 10.5 and later. If you're before that, you won't have all the features, specifically charting and things like that. Service parameters, don't alter the default maximum number of records returned from server. It can cause some problems. That's here. Extract operations will be running on your server and they're expensive, so try not to mess with that so that we don't have any problems where the public site brings down your server. You can enable WMS, WFS, WCS where applicable and turn off feature access if it's not needed. I'm going to go through this. They show up here on that API tab. So if you enable other formats of data, they will show up on the APIs. Organize layers and data sets into multiple services. We don't recommend you do the omni service of hundreds of layers. We prefer no more than 20 to a service. I get asked this a lot, hosted or on-premise. Hub online can run in like a hybrid mode where your items in online, you probably all know this, can point to your layers and servers that are on your network. Online Hub will power the website experience, and it's kind of the best of both worlds if you can use this setup, because if you have data you need to be hosting, but you can use online to feature it, this is a good way to go. Hosting data, I'm going to obviously say that online is generally better for your sake because we have to deal with all the stuff. The servers, the memory, updates, all of that's our fault. If something goes wrong, we have monitoring. We have a guy named Andrea. He says big dashboards in his office, and he's got a whole team of people. So use ArcGIS Online to host large or popular data sets. This is specifically if you're going to do a public site, but I always fear the media, not in like a bad way, but more of like you get picked up and then your little data set became popular overnight and lots of people are looking at it and they're zooming in or using an app and all of a sudden you weren't ready for that. So if you put data out there and it's big, like moving violations, parking tickets, something that a lot might happen for certain of you, then online is going to be a better place for that. Sync it up to that so that you have a layer of protection against your system of record. Structured metadata is good to enable metadata for your organization because some people may not even use your data if you don't do this. And metadata authoring is not fun, but it allows you to fully describe your data, make it usable so that if people need to know more, they can. The open data movement is very big on making the data usable, not just the data on the internet. It's there, you can tell how old this screenshot is by the UI, but it's there in your item details settings in your org. Looks a little bit different now, but it's the same. Let's see, I'm gonna skip that one. Last but not least is licensing. A lot of people won't use your data. I'm speaking more in the public vein, but they won't use it if you don't license it. I recommend the Creative Commons licensing. It's legally pretty well established, open. There's a nice questionnaire on the Creative Commons website that you can sit down with your counsel for 3 minutes and say, answer these questions about my data. It answers questions of like, can I use this data, can the consumer of this data adapt it into their own works? Yes or no. Can then they sell that for more money? Yes or no. So you have to make those decisions. If you don't do this, that news or journalist or academic may never even touch your data for fear of litigation because you didn't license your data. So that's actually set in the terms of use section of the item. And what's cool about Hub and online is you can just use the Creative Commons code. So at the top there, the most open one is CC0. You type CC0 in there and we'll show the Creative Commons badge in the application. It's pretty cool. HTTPS on everything. No longer can I say, maybe do it. Not anymore. It's 2019. Browsers are coming for you in terms of being more flagrant when you're not on HTTPS. If your site is HTTPS, but your services are HTTP, they don't show up in the HTTPS site, it'll be broken. Same goes for images. So host your third-party content on HTTPS, enable it for your org. I think soon, online is going to make this a requirement for all new organizations. So we're really trying to, like everything, be secure. Because there's good reasons for that. You know, you can. So your site's catalog, last but not least, you don't have to feature all of your online content or all of your portal content per site. There's this thing called the group manager, and it lets you pick groups. So there's my 3 items, and whatever number of items I assign will show up as my search results total. So that'll be another big key. You'll need to organize your data into groups and get them onto the sites. Okay, so that's kind of all the prep work. Choosing a header system is next. So today we have 2 options, basic and custom. Basic lets you, show a logo and the primary theme and requires no maintenance. We maintain it. Custom is that HTML I showed you. Custom headers can unify multiple sites. Refer to your sitemap plan. There's a CSS box on the side, so when I edit my custom header, I put my CSS in this box over here, and it will affect the HTML I write over here. You can do some pretty cool things by combining these two. And again, try to find that existing header system that you use. So these two kind of go in concert. If you're not familiar with CSS or HTML, basically you can assign special changes to different HTML items, give them names and variables, and then you assign it in the classes. So I can define what these things do, and we'll be good to go. And we also offer a lot of CSS variables for you to use, which I'll talk about here in a second. We have a lot more options coming to online in 7.1 later this month. That'll make the basic option more palatable. Because today it's really just a logo and a color and a sign-in button and a bell, and there's not a lot else you can do. So tomorrow you'll be able to, or on the 7th, I think it's the 17th of March, you'll be able to pick between standard and prominent. You'll be able to pick if you want the header system to be the full width of the display or boxed in into the center. You'll be able to set branding as you can today. Logo alignment is an option. We have alt text now for your logo, which is good for screen readers. And now we have finally the ability to add menu links into the basic header. So you don't have to use the HTML thing to do menu links, which is great. And it has a great overflow pattern. So you can have lots of links and it overflows into a menu that drops down. It looks really good on mobile. And then finally, we have these social icons here on the right. So if you turn them on, you can drop in your Twitter page or whatever. Hopefully you'll take advantage of these. They're coming really, really soon. And then they'll be available in Enterprise in 10.7.1, which is due later this year in like July. And the other thing that's really been a long time coming for us is this is the custom header. And you see that blue bar at the bottom, the third bar there that has my name in it? That is like a system level of controls. And a lot of you, some of you have CSS that out of existence because it hangs below their site. So we're blowing that up. And now your custom header will be below what we call the global or hub system controls. And it'll be above. And it'll be themable and have all our controls in there and a nice drawer on the side that lets you, get around your hub. So we're trying to be out of your way. At the end of the day, we have to have these controls. You can still CSS it out of existence. We kept that requirement open because we know some of you want to do that, but we're really hoping you can keep it out here because if the users are logged in, they can do things, they get notifications. There's a search bar that's global to all sites. So we're trying to make it easier to move around between your different properties and your websites for logged in users or non-logged in users. So we're really excited. That's also coming on the 17th. So this is a big one. I don't know how many existing hub users are in here, but this one is coming and it's going to move stuff. And we sent an email blast out, and I'm telling you now, be ready. If you have any questions, please email me. We're also talking on GeoNet everywhere. So, but inevitably we're going to surprise somebody. So I apologize. We don't do it often, but we've done it now 2 times this month, and then we won't do it again for years. Because we didn't for years. So let's teach some layout fundamentals. Dave is going to help really keep me honest here. There's some high-level vocabulary around the header, the theme. So we give you some options here to customize the objects that are on the page without you having to write any variables. So you have all of these are pretty self-descriptive. Like if I come out of code view, then I close this and I change my header background color. Again, we can all guess what's going to happen, but this is kind of what your theme does. The theme is important that you check all of the pages, not just this one that we're looking at here. It's going to affect every single page that has this header on it. Same thing with things like body text color. It's going to affect all of the search results. It's going to affect every dataset page. So don't just look at your theme and this editor and be like, that's everything. This looks great, because it will on the top site, and then you might drop down onto the search results page and it's horrible. So make sure when you change the theme that you evaluate the whole property, the whole site, the search results page, the data page, all that good stuff. we have the row card. The row card is the proto card. What I mean by that is all things must go in rows. So down here in the layout options, I can drag a row, and now I can put other cards inside. We'll talk more about the row card here in a bit. And then the cards themselves are all the other content that we bring to the site. So in this layout drawer, below the row card is all this stuff. And I'm going to talk about best practices on almost all of this, and how to use it. And then there's a footer. Footer's almost never ever engaged with ever by users, but it's a great place to put legalese, extra links, documentation, legalese. You're not gonna, even your employees probably won't read the footer. It's a good place for the stuff you don't need to be read. Quick lesson so we are built on Bootstrap 3. Some people are like, when will you do Bootstrap 4? I'm like, well, it's gonna be a while. So Bootstrap 3 is here for the time being because Bootstrap 4 is pretty disruptive in terms of all your existing sites, and we have thousands of them. I gotta teach you a quick lesson, and maybe Dave, you want to explain the column system a little bit here.
The Bootstrap column system. So Bootstrap's a CSS framework. There were a whole bunch of them around. Bootstrap's probably the most broadly used. And essentially, what it does is it just divides any container into 12 containers. And then when you squish things together, when you resize your browser or you view it on a different size device, there's a bunch of reflowing that's going to happen. So when you actually are customizing things and you're writing HTML, you have control over putting these classes on. So this grid size stuff down here, call XS some number, call medium, this sort of thing. And basically, if you set it to be call XS 4, then until it's down at the extra small size, it'll stay 4 wide. If you set it to medium, then it will reflow as soon as it goes below the medium breakpoints. So these breakpoints, the actual numbers here don't matter. This is the nice thing about using a super broadly used CSS framework. They know the sizes of devices, and it's going to reflow correctly on your individual device. I guess the important thing about using Bootstrap, if you are going to write a custom header, make sure you're doing it with Bootstrap. If you already have an existing site that is using some other CSS system, it's maybe you can put enough CS in there to make it look nice, but it's not going to reflow. So that is one of the challenges. But at the time we started this with Bootstrap 3, it was the most commonly used CSS framework in the world. Bootstrap 4 is now catching up. And the main, as Graham said, the switch to Bootstrap 4, really we have a little bit of a challenge. Either we do something and say, as of some arbitrary date, all new sites will use Bootstrap 4, and we don't break the old ones, which is probably the way we'll end up doing this, or we would have to try and do some crazy coding to automatically upgrade everyone's site. That doesn't sound like fun. Yeah, so at this point, there's a few people who've asked. It's not imminent.
Yeah.
Because of those reasons.
But Bootstrap 3 is there's I think a saying that half of the web is in Bootstrap and the other half is in something else, I forget. But it's
an older version of Bootstrap.
Yeah, an older version of Bootstrap.
It's so broadly used, it's almost ridiculous.
Yeah. So what it looks like, if you're writing your own HTML, that's one thing. But our layout system in the site editor, if you watch this video on these statistic cards, we're using arrows to basically control how wide each of the pieces of content is. So behind the scenes, we're setting that call number equal to the number, up to 12. You can only go up to 12 pieces of content on a row. And then it will reflow accordingly. So it's nice. You don't have to really think about it unless you're doing HTML. But custom headers is a big one. And we have a text card, which we'll talk about momentarily, that allows you to put custom HTML in as well. There's other really useful Bootstrap classes. If you're going to use images in your custom HTML, image responsive will let it fill the column, and as the screen changes size, the image will reflow to fill the changing container size. So it means that on a mobile phone, you might get less of an image than you would on a full width, desktop display. The other really useful one I found out about this week, thank you, Dave, is hidden and the device size. So if I say hidden MD, then when I get below a tablet, the thing will disappear. this is really cool because you can take that app that may not reflow or that that image that just doesn't look good when it gets small, and you can just make it vanish. So I just want to show you what I mean by all this. So I have these like two, let me see my mouse, there we go. I have these like two text cards, and text cards are great now in online, and they will be great in 10.7.1 for enterprise because you don't have to just look at code immediately. That's how it was before. You get this nice editor, but I wrote these manually. So this one has the call large 6, and this one's call medium 6, and this has the image responsive. So watch the difference as I reflow this screen between the top image and the bottom image in terms of how it, how that's going to, let me zoom out. All right, this might have, so one of them kind of changes size relatively, and the other just stays the same size. There we go. So the bottom line is you should be considering to do the thing like the top because it looks better, it's responsive to the screen size, and you'll get more points for the people on the smaller displays.
I'll say one more thing about Bootstrap as well. Bootstrap has a ton of documentation about all the things that you can do, and pretty much we support Bootstrap, so anything that you see in an example from Bootstrap 3, you can go drop into one of these text cards in HTML mode.
Yep. And then just to show, I think if I get small enough, oh, maybe I got rid of that. I can make it go away if I add that hidden class, but just have to take my word on it. So how the layout system, you can write custom HTML, we just talked about that. Experiment with the drawer close like I was, look at the size, reflow it. One other trick with the browser, if you right click and go into developer mode by clicking inspect, there's this little tiny button at the top. On Mac it's Command-Shift-M. It's emulator mode, and you can pick any phone device or responsive, and you can actually drag around, the application however you want to see. So really useful. I think my zoom is screwing it up. Hold on. Yeah, he always gets me. I open bugs sometimes because my browser's zoomed in. He's like, nope, it's you, not me. So experiment with different screen sizes. If you forget to do this, your thing might look great only on your machine. Number indicates how wide your column is, and the device thing indicates the screen. I just showed you that. Here's my best resource. So we actually theme Bootstrap for you to look like the Esri kind of look, and it uses the theme variables you set in that sidebar. So this is a good resource if you want to see a bunch of Bootstrap examples with our theme applied to it, knowing that the colors would change based on how you set your colors on your site. And as Dave just mentioned, Google Bootstrap 3 and how to use the internet or other actual more relevant things that you're trying to do. Drop down, badge, button, anything you need. It's probably going to be there. Okay, so now we get to go through all the cards. And this is where, rather than teach you how they work, it's going to be more tip focused. So we have documentation to teach you how they work. But the theme, I've already mentioned, follow the brand guidelines. The thing I see sometimes is we let you pick fonts, and some people pick really bad fonts. By bad, I mean they're dense, they're hard to read. You have to keep accessibility in mind in terms of like what you pick. So there's I'm not an expert on which fonts are accessible. My designer is, and our app by default is as accessible as possible, but try to avoid fonts that are hard to read or are narrow or bold, because if you have a vision impairment, it can be really difficult. Test every page in your site, especially with fonts and colors. There's all the pages. Any page underneath your site as a page item is also getting all the theme. So if you pick that, it might look bad on your page. Find the person whose job this is and consult them. What should you be picking? There's probably an answer. Sometimes on Google if you're an organization that's public, sometimes internal. The row card is good for edge-to-edge images. As of 10.7, we've added the ability for you to upload images. And that's really nice. They attach to the resource, the item resource, so they keep the same sharing. So if you have some sensitive financial information that you're sharing like a chart of, and you attach it this way, it'll get the same sharing as the item it's a part of. So that's really cool. Edge-to-edge images give you this kind of focal point thing, which I'll show you up here. This is, wow, it's a big row. Don't do that. You can tell I was like prepping for this presentation. This is a focal point control. So as the screen resizes down, which is gonna be really hard to see, I can pick which part of the image I want to zoom in on. Before we had this feature, it would always zoom in the bottom middle and you'd see people's feet. And a lot of people told us that's not good. So this is a nice way to kind of solve it. This control is pretty easy to change. And then as you squish, it'll squish nicely. You are responsible in your custom HTML when you use image responsive to set the class that sets the focal point. And if you can kind of Google that one too, Bootstrap 3 focal point image flow, it'll come up. You can override the theme for text and background color. And then there's this wide versus box thing. That's fairly new for 10.7 for enterprise, and it's existing in online since some day in the past. It's good for things like maps. So when I scroll down, this is a map that is not wide. And what I mean by that is it's just boxed in by the 12 columns. So if let's pick one in my org and hope it's a good one. It looks okay. This might be the style you want, but my personal preference is to make wide for things like maps and iframes and content because it looks better. So you can have your kind of content really take over. It also varies the visual layout. You don't want to just be the stovepipe website. It'll catch somebody's eye. It also doesn't trap your scroll, so it's nice. You don't get stuck. We used to get stuck. It was bad. You've probably done that. You fly, and all of a sudden the map's really small. And then unless you're fond of the internet in the 90s, don't upload giant images. So there's like a kind of a size restriction. I actually saw one of my colleagues made that hub demo site that shows you all the other sites, and the top image comes down like, 1997 or before. The image card is good for images that aren't edge to edge, and it can be images alongside text, and it reflows. Watch the HTTPS if you don't do that. Scale image to fill makes that image responsive. It applies that class for you in the card. So it'll change like an edge-to-edge image, and as soon as you turn that on, you get the focal point control. And please don't forget your alt text. That's what a screen reader needs to read that image. So explain what the image is. Don't just say image. And unless you're fond of internet in the 90s, don't upload giant images. Where can you find good images? Your organization probably owns some. So start there. Esri's got like a whole thing of it. It's pretty cool. I didn't know that until I asked somebody. Usually marketing, external PR, communications, those teams. Screenshot your own content in ArcGIS. Make an image. It's really easy. Just take a print screen and then make it smaller, especially if you're on a big monitor. There's these sites that don't require attribution on images. They're Unsplash and Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S. Attribution is nice. Flickr does require attribution. So remember what I said about the footer? Attribution. Good place for attribution. Icons from the Noun project are good too. If you need iconography or any type of SVGs and things like that, they require attribution if you don't pay for them as well. And I beat that horse. We don't recommend images that are too large. The banner card is kind of one that I feel like is gonna slowly become more irrelevant over time, but we're gonna support it for a very long time. It's kind of a jumbotron, combined search and page header title. There's a more advanced way to do it, using the search card and the text card in conjunction if you want to build a more custom looking jumbotron. Like that heading right there on the screenshot, you can't really do much with that in terms of changing how it looks, whereas the text card you have more options. The reason I say it's going to kind of go away is because search is now going to be part of that global header system coming in 10.7.1 and in March 17th. So now that there's search everywhere, do you need as many search bars on your page layout? Up to you, but this is a kind of a card that's like that. You've seen me in and out of this text card V2, which is new and online and coming in 10.7.1 as well. It's a visual editor of HTML. We still support HTML mode, but it's really nice because you can basically take a piece of content and just edit it directly. Before you would be immediately after clicking this, you'd see a white text editor and a bunch of code. So now you don't have to do that. You can also delete stuff and Command Z and get back. A couple other nice features. One other thing I really like is that we gave you a couple examples of Bootstrap card content. I made the text white, shame on me. Let's make it red. Oh, there you go, you can see it. So this is nice because we're basically giving some of our patterns that are on our Calc site, example site for Bootstrap, and you can just insert them. So we're trying to decrease your knowledge of Bootstrap, but still, that's how it's powered. And you can always jump into code view and see all the stuff that's going on in here in our site templates. And this thing is draggable too, so you can kind of make it. Look at that image responsive behind, isn't that cool? Bootstrap tables. I only want to mention this. We all know what a table looks like, but, or some of us know what a table, where's it? There it is, okay. We're still working on that. That little thing, it inserts below. People are like, yeah, it doesn't work. And we're trying to fix that, but it's tricky. The reason I mention this is when I put my cursor in, there's this H. Turn the H on, because tables for accessibility reasons need a header, a title. And screen readers will just start reading it like it's a table value, and they need to know what's in the column. So you might not press the H and use, if I turn the H off and I say this is like name, and then I say Dave, it doesn't, the screen reader won't say that this is the header, and they'll think like the value is name. Now, somebody can figure that out, but let's make our sites more accessible. You'll fail some criteria if you don't do this. So if you drop in a table, click the H. There are verify you've made good choices. There are, your text card choices have to be accessible if you're a good person, and the organizations, a lot of them have requirements for this. There's contrast checkers on the web. There's also contrast plugins for Chrome. I don't know what that bottom link is. Let's ignore the bottom link. I think that's something.
No, it should be a Chrome extension link.
Yeah, wow. I feel bad for pasting that. If anybody actually translates this, if you need this slide, come get my business card. I can send you the links. I would love to see PNMPOO MEC. All right. So showing other content. WebGIS is cool because it's all on the web, and the web lets you stitch together anything. So you have like 5 cards here in the layout that lets you pull something else into your site, actually embedded somehow. And I have different recommendations depending on how much stuff you want to show. If you have a lot of items that you want inside the site, more than 10, more than 4, combine the category card and the search card. Like, don't make your sites yard sales. Don't make it like just a list of all my stuff. It's not a usable experience. Like, there's an above the fold 3 seconds to capture somebody's attention. So give them a search bar and then give them the answers to what's on your site using categories. Categories can search based on tag or group. People in this conference and for a couple months have pointed out we need to add categories to the category card. I like to say we made the category card before they added categories, but we need to do that. So hopefully categories will be there in the future as well. Push them to that search results user experience, because once you're on a search results page, it's a lot better. Like, now I'm here, and now if I search for a broad area, I have facets I can sub-search. I can see the content types. I can see where the data is. I can see what's private and what's public if I'm logged in. So that's like, don't, more than 4, more than 10, do that. If you have less than 4, use a gallery card. Gallery card is like the gallery part of the ArcGIS Online. Great way to go. And then I want users visiting the site to experience this one app or map. Use the web map card, use an iframe. Iframe can embed it, go full width on that row, make it look really good. This site here, actually, the DC's has Tableau embedded, for example. They really wanted people to see this chart. According to our telemetry, so we do have Google Analytics and online, the category cards are among the most clicked things on our website. It's because it tells you the answer. So don't not use them. Use them what's on the site. Search card's good to enter a search. Gallery card is best for future content. The cards themselves are responsive. So if you only have one, it'll go full width. If you have many, they'll fit down. Some people don't like that because they put text in their thumbnails on the gallery, on the items. Like, they put text in the bottom, and being responsive, as I mentioned, it can disappear as the screen gets smaller. So try to avoid putting text in your thumbnails. You have the item title. Make the thumbnails visual, make the item title speak for you. Just to see if I can show you that. I guess I can't. Wait, yes I can. In Enterprise, I think I have one. Big money, no whammy. That's the gallery card. So if I put the name Bigfoot sightings in this thumbnail, as I make the screen smaller, it could get squished and reflow differently, look a bit different and bad on different screen sizes. So use the title. Add snippets to your items. Gallery card can do some cool stuff too. If you have a public site, but you want your employees to use it too, the gallery card is search-based. So if you're logged in, and I can see 5 items, but Dave is logged out, and there's only 3 public items, the gallery will be 3, but for me it'll be 5. You can intermix this and put the private and public data together. You can also make a gallery of just private data, and the gallery card has a nice feature of just disappearing when it doesn't have anything. So you can hide internal resources next to external ones, and only the logged in users will see it. Pretty cool. Web map or iframe card, pretty straightforward. You saw me demo that. You can also iframe more advanced content. I mentioned Tableau earlier. We had to actually find the buried setting that makes Tableau reflow. Tabflow. It's in there. It's called adaptive layout. You might iframe something that is not responsive. Don't do that. It'll look bad. Here's another example. You can also make your own iframe. So we don't support a table visualization for feature services. So these guys at Johns Creek coded up one and hosted it somewhere, and then they embedded it. So it looks like this. I don't know if you want to speak on what goes into this, but.
Had it on the whole time and not talking. But so we're at the developers conference and basically just want to say anything that you can code up and put on some URL, you can shove in an iframe. If you want to shove it in the iframe, make sure it's responsive. You know, this is a super simple, it's like 6 lines of JavaScript. It's just Dojo saying, hey, go fetch this data and shove it in a table. Bingo. So it's super fast, and the iframe is your easy entry point to go put stuff up in the middle of your sites.
Cool. And that's how it looks on the site there. You can kind of see it embedded. We have a chart card. It's powered using Cedar. Whole talks have been made about Cedar. We're still investing in it as a team. What Cedar does is it uses a library called AM Charts, and it lets you visualize your ArcGIS data. It's kind of a bridge between the two. Has this nice UI for customizing what type of chart you want. And you see that JSON mode. That JSON mode lets you do custom things. So we're developers. Cedar is AM Charts plus ArcGIS. We build our app in a framework called Ember, so we have a wrapper around it. This website's nice though because it's got a couple examples and a playground. There's the repo for Cedar. If you're building an app even outside of sites, you can use Cedar, and it's open source. And AM Charts 3 is the version we're on there. We seem to like the number 3. They have a 4. We're probably going to upgrade to 4 at some point as well, probably sooner than we upgrade Bootstrap. And overrides give you the ability to get access to that AM chart specification. So Cedar's kind of a thin layer, lets you define some things, but then you're like, but I want to change the axis color label thing that I know that's in the API for AM charts. So we in Cedar package this thing called overrides, and it lets you change more custom stuff. So you can kind of go nuts. And we have a good community of people on the Hub GeoNet. If you have questions, in the past people have messaged us, been like, why is this chart not working? We're happy to try to help you if you get stuck. We also have something called the summary statistic card. It's like the chart card, except for it just summarizes stuff. And you can pick the type of statistical operation, min, max, median, mean, average, on number fields. And then if you pick a text field, it's like count or count. Count.
On that card, I mean, there's, be smart about this, right? If your data doesn't change a whole lot, just use a text card and write the number in, because otherwise it's just going to bait on your system all day long, right? Every time it loads, it's going to make a query. If it doesn't change, then don't beat on your system and make it be slow. If stuff's changing all the time, connect it up. That's what it's there for. But
yep. We have a media card now. It makes it easier to embed YouTube. You don't want to know how many times we had to explain that you can't paste a YouTube URL. You have to get the iframe embed URL, and it's different. Now we do it for you. You can paste a YouTube URL, and we do it for you. It's nice. We also have these options. That's cool, too.
We learn slowly.
People also wanted social media embedded in Twitter streams. We don't allow JavaScript, and there was a whole thing there, and they found a way to do it with iframe, coding the whole thing. So now you can embed social media, Twitter, Facebook, it's context aware depending on what page you post. You put a feed, it's going to be a feed. You put a post, it's going to be a post. You put an event page from Facebook, it's going to be an event page from Facebook. Really, you're right. I mentioned Hub Premium. You can also launch initiatives. You can do this without a premium license, and it'll make a kind of a separate website team for each website. So in the Hub, you can, just to show you really quickly, if you don't like everybody to be able to edit everything, click this green button. And what it'll do behind the scenes is make a bunch of groups just for this project or this initiative or this website. Once you're in one of these, all the content that's in here is editable by the people on the sub team here, which is nice. So if you have different divisions and you need to give each division their own fiefdom, make the websites as part of initiatives. And then you can actually bring in other GIS content as well, and that follows the same sharing model. So this survey is also editable by the people on the team. If you license the premium part of Hub, you get access to launching events. Instead of using those Facebook events, you can use the Hub events to convene people. But more critically, you get another ArcGIS Online organization. This is cool because you can actually work with people outside of your organization on stuff. Before, they might be emailing you or sending you files or marking up a map, and you have to do data entry. Now you can license at a much cheaper cost per user, a user for the people outside of your organization. And they get added to this other org, so they're not subject to seeing all of your data or your enterprise SAML configuration. But they can work with you on those initiatives. We've actually done the hard work of allowing you to make that update group that everybody can collaborate around, allow members from this other trusted org into it. Which if you've ever made an update group, you can't just add a user from another org to it and co-edit an item with somebody from another org. At the Hub you can, if they join your community, which is super cool. And also you can use this to engage with business partners, consultants engaging with clients, engaging with your premium donors, engaging with the advocacy groups that are willing to help you. They get creator user types. Give them work. Extend your workforce. That's kind of the idea behind it. There are some cards that are unique if you license the Hub. The events piece, there's a bunch of event cards for your website. There's a follow button that does the same thing. We also have some really sweet sign-in changes coming in the next release of ArcGIS Online. The Hub sign-in will go from the left, which is kind of public account creation, to the right, which will allow you to log in even on an org URL to either org, the community or the Hub public. So you can share that private app that's in your org and grant just that community member access to it. And then they can log in even though it's your org's URL, get in. And I know it sounds really dumb, but it didn't work before, and it was really awkward to send somebody to ArcGIS Online to then click the link. Now it works. And at the very bottom, you can now create email-based accounts for your community, which is huge, because before it was just social media. People don't like to give social media stuff out. So that's coming out in 7.1. This also is a broader enterprise redesign of sign-in, so you'll see it elsewhere across ArcGIS Online, if you haven't heard about that already. Not really major implications. It only shows up if you pop out the sign-in. There's some other stuff. I have 1 minute, but I want to cover it. There's something called an Axe plugin. It gives you good accessibility tips for your websites. Axe plugin. It's not the body spray. We have a great blog about accessibility that has a ton of resources. It's awesome. There's also, I've talked about the mobile device emulation. You can make page load performance better by not embedding iframes. You can embed images with buttons and make the image a link and then drop them in the full user experience. Iframing stuff is not great because it puts double header systems and it looks kind of kludgy. It's not bad, but it's not great. So this is a great option. If you're like, hey, there's a thing, click it. Now you're in the full screen experience. If you're going to link out to content, don't do it in a new tab. That breaks accessibility requirements too. Everybody's got a browser back button. It's the way we should design our sites. There's some stuff coming to Hub. I think I've mentioned almost all of this. We are going to add HTTPS enforcement for your custom domains. That's a heavy requested thing. That's coming probably in a month or two. That's everything. Any questions?
Boom.
We have
Give him a hand. That was a lot of content so fast. Nice work.